these individuals who were my ancestors pretty much, and my grandfather, told me about things, about that level that they were on. This was a beautiful place. It was perfect in every way. The trees, everything was perfect. But I was told that this was not their final resting place, that place where they were at was just temporary, that they were going to move to another level as soon as they could. And I was told there, I found out later, that heaven, if you want to call it heaven, is a series of levels, and each level is better than the one before. Now, I know that there's at least 9 levels. There could be more, but I don't believe there's any less. And like I said, each one is better than the one before. Now, I was also told all kinds of things. Number one, there's no time there. They don't have clocks. They have no concept of time where they were at. That's one reason why I feel that I might have been in this place for longer than just a few hours while I was sleeping in bed. I could have been there a week. I could have been there a month. I could possibly been there a year. But when I came back from this, I came back at the time I should have been, about ready to wake up from my sleep time. But I realized that all the knowledge that I was receiving, I could not have done in just a few hours that I thought I was there to begin with. But like I said, there's different levels of heaven. I was also told that there's different levels of hell, that people that go into hell, I was raised in a Christian home. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in the Bible. It's a history book as far as I'm concerned. And the things that I'm telling you now does not bother my belief at all as far as I'm concerned. But hell does not have fire and brimstone like is described in the Bible. It might feel that way when you're there, but it's not a place of fire and brimstone. It's a place that you would not want to go to. There's nothing but pain and agony. There's hatred. There's fear. All these negative feelings are there, and it's so thick you could cut it with a knife. Now, the reason why I know this is later on, just a couple years ago, I went to hell. I was called there by this spirit. And the things that I just told you is what was there when I was there, and I could feel it. You could cut those feelings with a knife. It was hard to breathe.
Now, Alan, was it to the point where you were like a person that wasn't, or people that are in hell, are they reliving their past, all what they've done bad to people and hurting people, either physically, emotionally? Is it where they're reliving it over and over again?
Well, when I was there, let me start from the beginning on that. When I woke up in this astral projection, I was on this path. It was like gravel or rock path, and it was quite wide, but it's dark there, very dark. I could barely see my hand in front of my face. I could catch the outline of buildings to the left of me and buildings to the right of me, but there's no lights. They almost look like apartment buildings or something. There was a lot of windows in them, but I don't know why, because it's all dark there anyway. But as I started walking along this path, I realized that there was spirits, or if you want to call them people. They were hiding behind these boulders and behind the buildings and stuff. They would not make themselves, available to me. as I was walking also, I realized that there was 3 to 4 shadow people behind me. And I was getting kind of fearful because I didn't know what their plans were, being, what they were doing behind me. But I kept walking, and I came into view of this one spirit, and he wanted me to come closer. And I realized that that spirit called me to hell because he wanted to talk to me. And I went over to the side of the pathway, and he kept motioning for me to come closer. And he said, come closer, come over to me. And I told him at that point that I wasn't coming any closer, and that he had to tell me what he wanted from where he was at. And he was hiding around the corner of a building. And I gathered from the information that he gave me, I had an association with him when he was in this life, his physical life. As you know, I'm a healer, and his wife would call me maybe once or twice every 2 weeks. I'm sorry, my dog was here.
Oh, I almost thought it was my dog for a second, and I looked over there, and that took me by surprise. But that's okay.
Well, anyway, I used to go over to his wife, to their house. His wife would get these really bad headaches, and anyway, she would call me, and I'd go over and give her a blessing. I'd lay my hands on her head and stuff and give her a blessing, and this headache would go completely away, or at least subside enough where she could function again. And he did not like me. I guess he thought I was a crackpot or something. He would answer the door and let me in, but he didn't say hi. And I could tell by the way he acted that he didn't like me at all. And then he would go off into the bedroom or kitchen area or something where I didn't see him until I left. But that was the spirit that was calling me over to him. And I gathered from the conversation that we had that he was asking me basically to help him to either get out of that place or to relieve some of his pain that he had while he was there. I also learned that he had committed a murder in his physical life, and he was deathly afraid that man that he killed was in that place where he was at now. I told him, I cannot help it. You got yourself here, and I can't get you out. You're on your own. But about that same time, thank goodness, the projection ended, and I came back to where I was at before. Does that answer your question?
It does, but one thing you mentioned, shadow people. Is that the same shadow people that we hear people talking about on all these different talk shows about they would see a shadow person, in their room or their house or, out, outside, following them? Is that the same type of shadow person that you're talking about, or is that, something different?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. John, Gary, when you deal in these different realms and stuff, like the spirit world or whatever, these entities can present themselves to you as any way they want to. And that's what they presented themselves to me as. And that was shadow people. And I could not see through them. Of course, I was just looking over my shoulder as I was walking forward. So, but that's what I saw, and that's what they were presenting to me. I'm not saying all shadow people go to hell, but At least there's 4 of them there.
Well, that's my feeling. I've interviewed other people, seen shadow people. From some of the stories they told me, it kind of makes me feel that, they're not on the heaven side. The way they lurk around and all that stuff, it kind of makes me wondering if they're more on the, maybe the hell side or something, because you got the ghost or spirits of one type, and then you got the shadow people, which I think are completely opposite, which maybe could be, demons or not demons, but it's something to do with hell. But that's just my feeling. Now, everybody's going to have a different feeling.
Well, I've had other dealings with shadow people. My wife and I both have. We've never been attacked by them. We lived in a haunted house one time in Phoenix, Arizona, and we had shadow people in that house, and they were in the hallway, and they would dart back and forth between the walls in this hallway, but they never came forward or tried to attack us. Well, they acted more like they were watching us or spying on us or something.
Well, I would tell you, it would make me uncomfortable if I had, shadow people, roaming my house, watching or just, letting me know they were there, I don't know. I mean, it's so much talk about shadow people, some people say, oh, they're good. And then like I said, I've had some guests on it that say they're opposite because it always surrounds like death or something around it. So I don't know.
Well, that's a good analogy that you had, because in this house, I believe there was an evil entity in it. In fact, I know there was. I'd come home from work, and there would be hundreds of flies in the windows of the dining room and the kitchen area. And that only comes from an evil entity. And those flies, I don't even think were natural to Phoenix, you know what I mean? They were these big old fat, disgusting flies that could barely fly. And anyway, usually they hung around dead stuff, and this evil entity was basically causing those flies like that.
Well, well, Alan, not to interrupt you, but you made me remember something. I've been married now going on 42 years with the same woman. But before that, I made some mistakes. I was married twice before. Actually, 3 times. I married my second wife twice. Don't ever do that. But in my first marriage, my first wife, she was practicing witchcraft and all that stuff when I met her, which I just basically at that point thought she was a little strange. But, it was really strange. We bought a brand new house, and, everything was fine. And then I came home, and you mentioned like hundreds and hundreds of flies. I had the same thing. I walked into the kitchen, and I went to go downstairs, and there was literally thousands of big, fat, old flies, okay, which weren't there before. And, if you...
Been there, done that.
Yeah, and it was really strange because I even had an exterminator come out, and they said, well, they had to be here. And I go, they weren't here, trust me. They weren't here. It was a FHA repo home I bought. They just got done remodeling the house and doing all that stuff. And we moved in. There was not a single fly around there. And then all of a sudden, I could maybe see it with like little gnats or little flies, it just hatched. But these suckers were like old, older than us. And it was like thousands of them, and they were just like dying in front of me and all this stuff, and it was like really strange. I just thought about that when you brought that up about the flies. I don't know anybody else out there has ever ran into that, but it kind of like was really strange.
We have 3 dogs, and they're little dogs, and I couldn't really use poison